Well, hello there. My name is Ian, and welcome back to my YouTube channel. Today, Jonathan Cornell from Immersive Audio Album is joining us once again, and we're going to attempt something a little bit different. We are going to review 5 albums that have been mixed in Dolby Atmos and released. I think the oldest one is going back to April, but we're going to try and just briefly cover each one of these 5 albums in the course of this video. So up first, as I alluded to, this is the earliest release, although we aren't going in release order. We're going to talk about Jeff Buckley's Grace. And this has been remixed from the multi-track tapes by Steven Wilson. And this is an interesting case because this album was originally kind of unceremoniously dropped on streaming. And then a month or two later, we got this great physical edition. So I have lots of thoughts, but Jonathan, I'll let you go first. How do you feel about this mix?
Sure. Well, I was excited when Steven did this mix because there isn't really a lot of surround stuff from this era, like the mid 90s. Talking specifically about a lot of the projects he's done, it's been mainly like 70s and 80s stuff. Before this came out, I think the only albums he had mixed from the 90s were the Suede debut album and Marillion's Brave, which Marillion's Brave is kind of an outlier album. It's not really indicative of the style of the 90s, though it is a great record.
It's interesting you say that, but I almost hear that album as being in a similar universe as Jeff Buckley's Grace.
I never really thought about it, but I guess you could say so. But if anyone has seen the interview I did with Steven back in February, we spent quite a bit of time talking about this particular album, and he really took a lot of time. We spent a good 20 minutes of him just kind of going through his process of how he kind of deconstructed this album and how he approached it. Because one of the things that's interesting about the record is it's a very eclectic mix of styles. There's some pretty heavy songs. I would say the title track gets pretty heavy. And of course there's that song Eternal Life, which is kind of the closest, it's almost like Led Zeppelin-esque.
Or Soundgarden. Yeah.
Yeah. And then you have these kind of mellow, kind of just him and his guitar with no backing, like Hallelujah or Lilac Wine. So it's kind of interesting when you listen to how it was mixed in Atmos, the way each mix kind of fits the style of the song. Mm-hmm. So, on a song like Grace or Mojo Pin or Last Goodbye or any of the ones that have a lot of orchestration, there's quite a bit of separation of the parts. Guitars are often in the sides. In Last Goodbye, the strings are very clearly in the heights, which is really well done. In Mojo Pin and Grace, there are all kinds of guitar harmonics flying around and things. Those songs are really aggressively mixed. And then a song like Hallelujah, it's basically just Jeff in the front and reverb everywhere else. But I think that's kind of the best you could do with that material. I wouldn't like that approach if it was a dense song and all they did was just put reverb everywhere else. But for that particular track, I think it's suitable to, it's basically expanding upon the effect they were trying to give in the original stereo version. So, it's an iconic album. It's one that I know was on a lot of people's lists as a classic that they'd like to see get a surround mix. I think there was an SACD release of it in the early 2000s, but they didn't do a surround version back then. But I think it's super well done. I really enjoy it, and I'm glad it's on a standalone Blu-ray and it's not in some kind of huge box set, as could have easily been the case.
Yeah, so my impressions as somebody who's coming to this record practically for the first time, I'm actually more, I guess, familiar with his father's work, with Tim Buckley's work. Tim was signed to Frank Zappa's label, so I'm a little bit familiar with his stuff. As somebody who's coming to this for the first time, I was kind of struck by the fact that, to me, this almost feels like an older Steve Wilson mix. And I mean that I don't know if conservative is the word I would use, but it's definitely respectful of the material and very unpretentious in kind of the same way that the music is. So I feel like the mix suits the music. This isn't a situation where, say, like a Frankie Goes to Hollywood or something like that, where everything's flying around you constantly and it's consistently active. Everything to me seems pretty well grounded. but then you'll hear something pop up behind your head and you'll go like, oh, okay, that's really nice. And I think, the point of this is to say that I think this mix approach works really well for this album, especially since Jeff's no longer with us. He can't provide he can't tell us what his wishes are. So I feel like this works really well for this album. And it took a couple of listens for me to kind of gel with it, because it's very raw, like emotionally, like it hits a raw nerve in me, and very spiritual. And if you get a chance, I do recommend taking a look at the documentary that came out last year about Jeff's life and his work, because his main influences were like Black female blues singers and Led Zeppelin.
Yeah.
and he could imitate both. I think he has such a chameleon nature to his voice that works really well. I think he's a fantastic guitar player. Like this mix really, I think, emphasizes the complexity of some of his guitar work. And also the songs themselves have, dare I say, kind of a progressive nature at times. Like they go in unexpected directions and have unexpected dynamics. So I really enjoy this mix, and I would recommend it.
Yeah, for sure. I can't disagree with anything you said there.
This is the latest solo record from the Pineapple Thieves frontman and songwriter and guitarist, Bruce Soord. Bruce is also now taking over the mantle of the Tall remixer. And this album, Ghosts in the Park, was released on the same day as his absolutely revelatory remix of Under Wraps and Walk Into Light. So since that release, I guess I should walk back a little bit and say that it was originally released as a quite expensive box set, 4 discs. There's 3 different multi-channel mixes, the acoustic, the piano, and the full all singing, all playing kind of version.
Yep.
But since then, since the physical release, this has a digital release on immersivealbumaudio.com. And for $25, you can get kind of the basic version, and for $29, just a few dollars more, just like the Sergio Leone Western, you can get the acoustic version as well. So Jonathan, you want to tell us about this, one of the latest releases from IAA?
Sure. Well, one of the things that I always wonder about, and I've asked Bruce about this the last time I interviewed him, is like sort of what is the difference between a Bruce Soord album and a Pineapple Thief album? Because he is obviously like the front man, the main songwriter. Yeah, in more recent years, I think Gavin Harrison has had more of an influence on certainly like how the songs are arranged, and I think maybe some of the songwriting as well. I'm not entirely sure about that, but I think there is sort of a definite difference between the albums that came out before he joined and after.
Sure.
So I think, the Pineapple Thief are already they're like a fairly mellow band. Some of the albums they made kind of in the like early 2010s, like that second box set covers, get to be pretty heavy, but they're not as heavy as like, In Absentia era Porcupine Tree. Like they never quite got to that point. But for Bruce's solo stuff, it's generally pretty acoustic. Mm-hmm. Like it's more of like a kind of singer-songwriter thing where he plays all the parts. And like he really does everything, including the drum programming. Mm-hmm. So I think there's maybe one track on this album where one of the guys in the Pineapple Thief plays bass on one of the songs, but otherwise I think he played everything on this record. And again, I'll refer you to the interview I did with him where we talked mostly about Under Wraps, but a little bit about this record because it hadn't been announced yet at the time. But it was kind of written while they were on, the Pineapple Thief were on quite a long tour for their last record, It Leads to This, that came out in 2024. It was like on and off for about 2 years. And he said the songs were kind of written like while he was staying in hotel rooms in various cities all around like Europe and South America. And for the actual album, they kept a lot of like the hotel room recordings. Like he said, when he got back to his studio in England, like he tried to kind of replace some of the parts and it didn't quite have the same energy to it. But I think, when you hear a lot of Bruce's music, and particularly this record, I think with this album, he's been a little more transparent as to what the songs are about. But I feel like you could tell like this guy's been through some stuff,
Oh, yeah.
like there's, And certainly with this album, he's talked about how it's a lot about both of his parents recently passed away, and they both had Alzheimer's or dementia, something like that. And you can hear kind of some of the songs are about that experience of kind of watching them deteriorate. So I wouldn't say it's a happy album. It's kind of melancholy. But even if you discount the lyrics and the meaning, like the melodies are just so good on some of these songs. Like a track like Pillars or Day of Wrath. I mean,
that's my favorite. Yeah, Day of Wrath is my fave. Yep.
I mean, he's great at doing these multi-tracked like harmonies with different parts coming from all directions. Like Day of Wrath is a good example of that, where he's doing these sort of like wordless harmony things that sort of come at you from all the different corners in the Atmos mix. So I think, I mean, this is his 4th solo album. I'm torn on whether I like this one better than the last one. I think the last solo record was really good too. It's sort of a toss-up for me. I mean, I like all of them, but maybe this might be his best one. I don't know. I'm not sure. I mean, this is the newest one. It's the one I've been spending the most time with. But you mentioned the acoustic version. So I tested this album when Bruce was doing the surround mixes. This was like at the beginning of this year, like January or February, something like that. And the acoustic versions actually sort of came about because of a comment that I made during the testing. Like while I was like emailing him, I was like, what would be cool? Like, what if he did a version if you just like muted all the drums and it was just like you and the guitar? And he was like, oh, that sounds interesting. And then the next version I got, like, he just did it. So it's kind of funny how that came about. It's a shame we couldn't get the piano versions for the IA release. I think they didn't want the download to sort of directly compete with the box set.
Yeah.
And like, I don't have a copy of the box set, but I do have the one for Luminescence, and it's really well done. Like, it's a nice kind of art book with lyrics and pictures and things. So, I mean, I think they do a good job on putting together the physical editions for these. And the piano version is really cool. But, I mean, when we were talking about doing the IA version, I thought it was originally just going to be the main album. So I'm glad they even gave us the acoustic version.
Sure.
And kind of like Steven Wilson, Bruce does a dedicated 5.1 mix, and then he does the Atmos mix. So they are pretty different. And because of what the nature of how this record was recorded, like just one guy constantly overdubbing himself, there's a lot to work with in an Atmos version. Multiple guitar parts. Some of the songs have acoustic and electric guitars, tons of vocals. There's tons of reverb on this record. Like, it's super reverby. Like, there's some songs where you feel like you're in like you're in like an empty auditorium or like a cave or something. It's just super atmospheric. And I would say certainly for new music, it's one of my favorite albums of the year so far.
Sure. Yeah. Well, well said. But what I would like to add is I listened to this in the context of his Walk Into Light and Under Wraps remixes, because it's like they came out at the same time. It's the same mixer. And I sat down, I thought, I want to hear what his music sounds like, because I thought he helped me to hear that Tull material in a completely new way. And what struck me is that it's so different. I wouldn't necessarily, if you blind tested me, I wouldn't necessarily know it was the same mixer handling both. This has an excellent sound to it. Don't get me wrong. I mean, if anything, I think it proves that Bruce could have a hand in future Tull mixes, because it's very acoustic based. And, I kept thinking of something like Catfish Rising, which is basically an acoustic blues album. Like, what could he bring to that? Because the word that I would use to describe this album and its sound, and especially the acoustic versions, is it's extremely natural sounding. And the other thing is that I think that the way that Bruce plays with reverb on this album is extremely fascinating. Like, it's just kind of thrown all around and adds something extra to the texture. It's just like another instrument almost. Now, going back between the full band, Bruce band version and the acoustic version, it almost feels like two completely different albums to me. And a record that I would very I guess I should say a record that this evokes to me is maybe something like Opeth's Damnation. Like
Yeah.
it's like ghostly haunted feel to it, if you excuse the pun. But it's also very beautiful. And I mean, I didn't know anything about the backstory, but I felt myself really sucked into its atmosphere, more so than I did with Luminescence, which I really, really liked Luminescence. I think this is a little stronger. I love the song Day of Wrath, but I also wanted to mention the title track, which I think I had made the offhand comment that it was like Baker Street Muse a little bit. Like, and now that I've heard it, I actually realize how on point my comment was, because it's basically just centered around his guitar and the storytelling, and then it just goes all these different places. And you might flip it on and think, oh my goodness, 13 minutes. This might be a slog, but it ends up just ending before I even realized that I've heard. I was like, wow, it's almost over again.
Yeah, that track is very much kind of a throwback to like the early Pineapple Thief albums. I felt like, because the way the first couple of Pineapple Thief albums were made, like the sort of 1999 to 2006 period, which he had done a huge box set in 2023 where he mixed all those albums in Atmos. And those albums were made kind of the same way this one was. It was kind of before the Pineapple Thief was a fully fledged touring entity. It was kind of just him in his bedroom, building up these tracks. And in the earlier albums, there are a lot of these like longer songs that are kind of built around like an acoustic guitar riff that sort of goes in unexpected places. There's a song on one of the earlier albums called Remember Us that I think this one sort of reminds me a lot of. And in the more recent Pineapple Thief albums, the songwriting has become a little more concise. I mean, there have been a couple of longer songs in the sort of Gavin Harrison era. There's a track called The Final Thing on My Mind from the first album he was on that is also like a pretty long song. But yeah, this sort of felt like it was sort of going back to that earlier Pineapple Thief period. And I think because he had just remixed that stuff, that was probably kind of in his head when he was making this album.
Interesting. Yeah. It's like he went so far back, he ended up influencing himself.
And to go back on another thing you mentioned, like the way that the sort of reverbs and delays are used, certainly the like delays kind of like ping-ponging around is very much a signature thing that he does. You hear that all over the Pineapple Thief records, delays like on, guitar or vocals. Maybe there were some parts in Under Wraps where that happens. I mean, the material is so different that it's sort of hard to compare it.
Yeah.
But yeah,
I mean, between these three, Walk into Light, Under Wraps, and now this, I think he's officially etched out a position on my Mount Rushmore of Atmos mixers. And the only other thing that I wanted to mention, and if I ever have the honor and pleasure of speaking with Bruce, I would like to ask him if he's a fan of Roy Harper. Have you ever listened to Roy Harper, Jonathan?
Just on Have a Cigar.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Yeah. So you know who he is.
Yes.
Well, he's got a great 1971 record called Stormcock. And Stormcock is basically all him on various acoustic guitars. And I think Jimmy Page appears on one song. And I think there's some like orchestral arrangements on one song. But just the way that these different acoustic instruments, and I'm talking about especially in the acoustic mix, the way that they all interlock, and you'll hear him strumming in one channel and kind of picking in another, and you can hear all these different textures coming together. My last thought is, and I think this is a million and one shot, but if the multi-track tapes existed for Stormcock, I would love it if Bruce got his hands on that, because I think he could do something really special with that. And I'm looking forward to hearing where his career goes next, because here you have a guy who's, basically kind of a workman's Atmos mixer. Like he's done jobs for people like Gong, Opeth. But you have this moment where he's finally done like a catalog mix with Under Wraps. And not to mention his own material is mixed, but I'm just really super curious to hear where he goes next, if there's more catalog stuff in his future. But sort of like in the way that whenever Steven Wilson does a mix or does a solo album, you can kind of tell the influence of his mixing work coming through. So I'm kind of interested to see where he goes next. But
well, it was funny
album.
because in the interview he was saying that they're just starting to work on a new Pineapple Thief album because they just signed with Inside Out, and he was like, like this experience I had, remixing Under Wraps, like hearing how Ian approached the vocals, like I want to kind of bring some of that energy into the next Pineapple Thief record. So will there be some like crazy like vocal layering in the next Pineapple Thief record? We'll have to see. But that would be interesting if we heard the influence of Under Wraps in that new record.
Yeah, it would be. All right. So I think we're good to move ahead to our next choice. And this is the latest release from Christopher Holt and the Kitchen Sink. So, Jonathan, I will let you introduce this project because I have this feeling you know a lot about it.
What a great cover picture, right?
Yeah, it's a great shot.
Yeah, they did such a great job putting all the artwork together. So I think we had talked about this a little bit like in an earlier video that we did, and it was probably like a long time ago because I thought this would be out sooner than it was. Like it ended up taking more time than we thought it would, but I think it was all for the best because it turned out really well. But as people may recall, talking about Christopher Holt, I did an Atmos mix of his studio album Across the Milky Way, which came out last May, and then the Atmos mix came out like later on in the fall. And yeah, you've got the CD copy there. But if you're going to listen to it, listen to the Atmos mix. But while we were working on this record, they had mentioned to me that when Across the Milky Way first came out in May 2025, they did like one show where they played the whole record through. And it's a complicated album. Like it was made very similar to the way that Ghosts in the Park was made, just kind of Chris in his home studio, overdubbing himself. There were some other people that play on it, but it was sort of mostly made by him. And they had to put together a 9-piece band to cover all the parts. So it's like, 3 guitars, 3 keyboards, drums, percussion, and everybody sings.
It's an arsenal.
Yeah, the Kitchen Sink was a good band name. And they recorded the show because they knew that I think it would be a one-off event because they, to tour with a 9-piece band, like it was just not, financially feasible.
Sure. And
it was played at the Kessler Theater, which is this historic venue in Dallas near where Chris is based. So they told me this had happened when I was working on the studio album. And I was like, you guys going to do anything with that? Like, are you going to put out the video? Because I had in my head, we could do something kind of like, Steven Wilson at the Royal Albert Hall or like the Big Big Train albums, like a video with surround mix combination. Mm-hmm. And I think they were Chris is very kind of sort of critical of himself. And I think he wasn't entirely sure, like, if the recording was good enough or if he wanted to put it out. But I kept like really pushing them on it. And we eventually decided, to go for it. So they sent me the camera feeds. So it was shot with like a 4-camera setup and the like soundboard multi-track, which was like, I don't know, 20 or 30 channels, something like that. And I mixed the whole thing and it was about a 90-minute show. I mixed it in both stereo and Atmos, and I was able to cut the video along with it. And it was just released as an exclusive IA download as of the time we're speaking last week.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah. So, I've heard it enough times. I'm curious what you thought of it. And, I'm happy to answer any questions about the process and how it worked. Cause it was hard. Like this is a hard project.
Yeah, and it shows. Well, I do definitely have thoughts, and I had the honor of testing this a few times for you, which I really appreciated. So I got to hear a few in progress versions, and I kind of got to see it, bloom and come to life in the end. And it was really gratifying to watch that transition. And so here's my thoughts. So when I was watching and listening to this, I was reminded of my teenage years and my youth whenever I would go to places like Sam Goody or FYE, and I would buy the latest DVD release from whatever my favorite band was, and I'd come home and watch it because it's that level of quality. I think it's like Brian Wilson's Smile concert with the Wondermints, and musically it reminds me of Brian Wilson and the Wondermints, with maybe a little bit of Jellyfish, like that kind of power pop idea. Now, there's something about Chris's voice that took me a little bit of getting used to, but here on this live record, it works really well for me. He's almost got like a Neil Youngish thing, quality to his voice. And I have to say that coming from the studio album, which you said is basically just Chris in his house doing all the parts, layering stuff, to this, I feel like his songs really come to life with this fantastic band of top shelf players backing him. Now, as for the mix, I feel your pain because I have mixed live material before. And it's a trip. And I've also mixed material that has to match video, which has its own considerations. So what I noticed is that as I'm watching it, the instruments are spread exactly the way that they appear on screen. So if there's a guitar part coming over from, say, the right side of the screen, I'm hearing it on the right side. Now, we always talk about, whenever we talk about, like for instance, when we did our live mixes video, it was one of the
and when I was working on this, I was thinking about all the things we talked about in that video.
Right. So just to reiterate for people who haven't seen it, there's two kinds of like live surround mixes. There's kind of the band up front stereo mix with just the expanded room mics in the back, or you can go really crazy like Steven Wilson would do and have things floating all around, or, say like the complete opposite end of the spectrum, something like Made in Japan, which is crazy because there's no video and you're afforded more options there. This, I think, does a good job of striking a balance between feeling like I'm realistically there at the show. Like when Chris will either speak or sing, I can hear the reverberation in the back of the room. Like it sounds like he's on a giant PA to me. But at the same time, I'll be listening and I'll hear like a keyboard part start to float in the back, or I'll hear a little bit of guitar, or I will hear backing vocals coming in the back. Or even there's a spot where Chris takes an absolutely breathtaking solo, and it's early on in the set. It's like the second song, and it's very obviously going up for the heights. But this is just an elongated way of saying that I really enjoyed this concert a lot. And it elevated my feelings on the Across the Milky Way material. I've had different songs from this running through my head all week. And I'm not even like listening to it obsessively, but like something like California Scheming is just running through my head constantly, or The Quicksand, or I Can Only Be Myself, which that song almost sounds like a 90s pop tune. It takes me back to like Britney Spears or something like that. He's and here's the other thing. He almost reminds me a little bit of the Jeff album we were just talking about, because every song has its own little genre. Like you have a song like I Need a Hearing Aid, which is like power punk or something. Like it's really energetic, or a song like Lost by the River, which is very ethereal and just kind of takes you down the stream. You also get an excellent selection of encores, and I kind of had to take the encores as their own little like side mission. Like I listened to those in isolation from everything else, and that material is great. So I'm really excited about your collaborations with Chris. I watched your interview with him this morning, and I'm excited to hear. I think you're going to mix like one of his older records. So
they haven't come to me like with anything yet, but like we've just kind of talked about that we would probably do that one next, because that's the one he has multi-tracks for.
Right. Yeah. But all this to say, file this one under Local Boy Does Good. I think it's an excellent mixing job from you. I think it's an excellent performance from Chris and the band. And it has my recommendation. If you like Brian Wilson and the Beach Boys, if you like Jellyfish, if you like XTC, if you like Steely Dan, if you like the Eagles, which I don't, but I like this, I recommend it.
Well, thank you. And yeah, I mean, to your point about the mix, I think we knew going into it that it couldn't be as aggressive as the mix for the studio album was, because the
Right.
studio album was like one of those things where it's like you had 10 channels of vocals and you could put like some in the front heights and some in the back. And you could really kind of go out there with it because it was like this sort of like one-man band. And with this, I mean, there were things about the tracks that sort of necessitated, like there was like bleed on some stuff.
Yeah,
Like
sure.
on some of the guitar amps, like you could hear the drums. So it was like if the guitar came out of the ceiling, it was like there would suddenly be some drum sound that would appear in the ceiling, and that would sound weird. So yeah, I think it was kind of the main thing that inspired the mix was I saw an old interview that Elliot Shiner gave, like, you know, more than 20 years ago, when he was talking about mixing the Eagles reunion live album. It's called Hell Freezes Over. It came out like in the late 90s. And he was like, well, you know, like the Eagles are kind of in the front, like if you look at the stage. But then behind them, like there's this whole back line of like other musicians. Like there's a guy playing keyboards. There's on a couple of the songs, I think there's like string players. So he was like, I took the guys in the back line who were like the side men, and I just put them in the back. And like it sounded good to me. Yeah. So that was kind of what I did on this. Like if you look at the stage setup, like one of the shots in the video is kind of like a wide shot where you could see the whole stage. And, you know, it's always Chris in the center, and the two other guitar players are kind of directly to the left and right of him. And then there are these guys playing keyboards that are kind of more in the back with the drums. There's actually 3 keyboard players, but a lot of times throughout the show, like the guys change instruments. Like they'll be playing like acoustic guitar for the first half of the song, then they'll switch to keyboards. I think everybody in the band was a multi-instrumentalist, except maybe the bass player was the only one who didn't switch instruments throughout the whole show. And there's like during that bit where Chris is like introducing the band, he's like, the man who plays the least instruments this evening. And yeah, that was fun too. That we left all the we left a lot of the banter between songs, and I think I had to sort of like argue with Chris a little bit about some of that stuff. Like he had wanted it to just be the songs, and I was like, oh, like this stuff's fun. Like we should put it in. So that was one argument that I won, putting the stage banter back in. And like when it comes to mixing a live album, kind of like you said, you know, this isn't because like the band played badly or anything. They played great, but like there's a lot of stuff you have to kind of clean up because of the nature of what it is. Yeah. You know, like maybe there'll be like a bad note here and there, and you have to like sort of grab that note from somewhere else and like paste it on there. There's a lot of that going on. Yep. One thing that surprised me is that the stage mics were like completely dry. Like you would think, because it was a live album, like there would be a bit of sort of natural ambience in the recording, but there really wasn't at all. So all that reverb was just added with a plugin. Interesting. Like I went through a bunch of different like, you know, room presets with different things and just found one that sounded good. Yeah. Because they didn't put up any, like there was no like crowd mic or anything. The cameras had audio on them, but that was also like pretty.
So is that how you got the audience noise, was from the camera audio?
Yes, but the camera audio, the camera audio was always like a little bit out of sync with everything else. Sure. I guess because of, you know, the sound travels, the distance. Yeah, so you could hear during some of the like the talking before the songs, like there's a bit of comb filtering because the crowd noise is like a slightly behind the you know mic on the person talking. But yeah, the crowd mics, I would just kind of fade them up at the end of each song. Yeah. I mean, I think that's typically what people do on live albums. That's what I did. Yeah. That's what I did too. Yeah. And we had sort of debated whether the concert should be like a contiguous thing, or if we should kind of treat each song like a sort of vignette, like we're fade to black, then fade down. I think we ended up doing it the vignette way because the stuff that happened between the songs often wasn't that interesting. It was like they you know tune up or something. Yeah. And it was also easier to make the download a bunch of separate MKVs and not like a single file that was like 30 gig. Yeah. I mean, if you wanted to append all the files together and make it a continuous thing with chapters, like I put in instructions in the download for how to do that. Yeah. But yeah, I'm really happy with how it turned out. I think it's better than at least one live surround mix you've got in your collection, maybe more. And the band played well. The recording was really good. I mentioned in the article I wrote about it that it's kind of a good place to start with Chris.
It is. Yeah.
He's got a lot of albums, and it's one of those things where like you're not sure where you want to go first. And this has the whole latest album played through, so you can get a feel for that. And I agree with you. Some of the songs have a little bit more energy, just because of the natural. They sped up a little bit playing live. Like it felt a little more intense.
Natural chemistry between people playing together. Whereas if you're laying down one track at a time, you maybe have a click track. And you're just putting everything. And unless you're Stevie Wonder, it's really hard to make that sound like a band.
Yeah. And then there's that encore set, which had basically one song from each of the previous solo albums. Well, actually, in the case of Stargazer, I think it had more than one, but that was a double album.
Two. Yeah.
Yeah.
And that material is very strong. I wish I could remember song titles, but there's one called Meltdown, I think, that I really enjoyed.
It's got like a violin in it. Like there's some really interesting. Yeah. One of those guys in the band, Eric Neal, who's one of the, he's like the lead guitar player of the show. Like the amount of instruments that guy played, like he plays accordion on one song. He plays violin on another one. He sings on all of them. He plays pedal steel on a bunch of them. Crazy good musician.
Yeah. I mean, it's an example of how do you take a 10-piece band and make it sound like a 30-piece band. That's how big this is. And I really enjoyed it. And I think I'll be going back and revisiting it. And like I said, I'm looking forward to hearing whatever comes out from you guys, because Chris is an artist that I would have never discovered if not for his music being presented in multi-channel.
Well, that's that's the thing with a lot of these artists we've been talking about, Bruce Soord, even for me, I found out about Steven Wilson first as mixer of old albums. And then I found out he makes his own music too. Like, what's this?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sure.
So I think for sure we're going to do that older album that came out in 2005 or 6. I'm kind of waiting to get started on that. And if you've heard the record, it's called Summer Reverb. Like you could tell already by listening to the stereo, there's a lot of opportunities to do interesting surround things with it. The one I really want to do, which I mentioned in the interview with Chris, is that Stargazer album.
Yes.
Which is like as over the top as Across the Milky Way. Crazy amount of overdubs and things. That record was made with 3 different producers and a bunch of different studios. So it's a question of who has all the original sessions for it. Yep. They told me that at least some of the songs were mixed in Logic and not in Pro Tools, which makes me nervous. Like I'm just going to get a bunch of raw tracks, like with no edits or plugins or anything. So, I guess we'll burn that bridge when we get there. But yeah, I mean, it was purely by circumstance that I happened to start this collaboration with him. I mean, his manager, Craig, who funded all these projects, just kind of reached out to me last summer, and it's become like a really good, ongoing partnership. And I feel very fortunate to have been put in that position.
Yeah. Shout out to Craig for being a friend of both of ours and a viewer of the channel. So Craig actually sent me the whole catalog. So when you start going back and remixing that stuff, I'll have to listen to the originals and compare, and it'll be good. So I thought that this was a good time to take an intermission and mention that for those of you who are wondering how to play digital downloads of Atmos files, we did do a video of that on Jonathan's Immersive Audio Album YouTube channel. But just a quick recap, there's a device called a Neumi Atom 4K, and I will leave a link to purchase one in the description. So if you're thinking, you know what, I don't want to spend $90 on a Bruce Soord box set, but I want to hear his new record, you can purchase the Neumi Atom 4K, and you can purchase a download from Immersive Audio Album. And while you're at it, go pick up Christopher Holt in the Kitchen Sink. Don't Give Up on Luck, live at the Kessler. It's an excellent release, and you won't regret it. I think you'll enjoy this if you enjoy good songwriting, good performance, and a good mix.
For sure, very much appreciated.
So now we're going to take a bit of a tonal whiplash here and talk about this latest release from the Kraftwerk camp. And I think both you and I would agree that the Autobahn release from last year is one of the very best multi-channel mixes. And it's sort of like, again, Under Wraps is looming large over our discussion today. But it's sort of like the Under Wraps album in that it's just such unconventional music that you don't have to follow any rules. You can do anything you want with it. I mean, this is a band that's basically, they didn't use drum machines, but they used electronic percussion before basically really anybody else did, because they built their own electronic percussion rig. There's lots of keyboard sounds, there's mellotron sounds, and there's stuff that the guys did with their voices, just layering stuff and different ambient sounds. And this record in particular has kind of like this imaginary radio program theme running through it, conceptual theme running through it. Here's a band that admittedly, like self-admittedly, are as much of an art installation as they are a musical project. And I think that this release communicates that idea extremely successfully. And I think I like this one better than Autobahn, just because it does a really nice job of striking a balance between, say, the earlier, super experimental Kraftwerk albums that they don't even want us to hear. Like, you try to find Kraftwerk 1 through 3 on any format, and it's next to impossible. But it kind of strikes a balance between that Kraftwerk and kind of the later, more dancey, say, Man Machine era Kraftwerk. So I'll turn it over to you, Jonathan, and then I'll add my thoughts. What did you think of this mix?
Well, it's like when Steven was talking about mixing grace in Atmos, he was kind of like, you can't have the guitar players kind of have to be like in the same place as the drums, or it becomes unglued. Like, there are certain considerations when you're mixing acoustic rock music where sometimes you can't separate things as much as people might think you can. Yeah. And with this material, like, none of that applies. Right. It's like with Frankie Goes to Hollywood. Like, you could do whatever you want. You can have
the rule book
flying around, percussion everywhere. I mean, I think it's totally like an Atmos demo disc, this album.
Yeah, totally.
And I don't remember being quite as impressed by the mix of Autobahn. Like, I remember thinking it was good, but it didn't quite like knock me out of my chair like this one. So, and I always say this, but it's a standalone Blu-ray, like Autobahn was. The price of admission is low to check this stuff out. Mm-hmm. And it's on Apple Music too, if you want to sample it there as well. Both the Atmos mixes for Autobahn and Radioactivity are streaming, so you can check them out there as well.
Yeah.
But this isn't like totally my kind of music. Like, Kraftwerk was never a band I spent that much time listening to. The only record that my dad had by them was Trans-Europe Express, which I think he bought it just because he thought like the cover was interesting. Like, what's this? So that one I kind of know, and I would be excited if they do an Atmos mix of that album.
Oh yeah, Metal on Metal. I think that would be a really cool track in surround, because it's a cool track in stereo. But the thing that kind of struck me about this is that Autobahn is like that's an album that's a tale of two sides. So you have the first side, which is a very programmatic piece where the music itself makes you feel like you're driving on the highway and you're going at high speed and people are whizzing by you, but you're just kind of like you're on this journey, and the countryside just kind of unravels, and then suddenly you're in more urban or industrial areas. And second side, on the other hand, is more experimental and more ambient, I guess you could say. This is consistent all the way through. You have these kind of ambient interludes in between each tracks, but there's like 3 or 4 or 5 songs on this that are as good as any songs in the band's career. And again, like, they're spread out. Like, something like Radioactivity, super catchy. Airwaves, I think, is one that's awesome. Antenna, like that's one that just kind of had me like bopping my head when I was listening to it. Or even something really beautiful like Om Sweet Om.
I was just saying, generally, like it was more accessible than I thought it would be.
Yeah.
Which was a pleasant surprise for someone like me who isn't as big a fan of this style of music. So yeah, I think it would be difficult not to recommend this, to any, particularly like if you're just looking for something cool to listen to in Atmos that really uses the whole space.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. You'll be surprised. Like, I mean, and how do I describe this mix? Like, okay, there's a bleep and a blurp in my left back speaker.
Yeah, it's one I didn't do an article on it because it's just too hard. Yeah, like it's not one where you could say like the guitar comes over from there and the keyboards come from there. Like it's
guitar?
Yeah, it's one of those things where I think you have to sort of just turn your brain off and just experience it. Like it's like going on like a roller coaster.
Yeah, or cinema, for your ears. And the only thing I would add is that the night that I put this on, I was a bit stressed out. And I remember putting this on and I just floated into the sweetest kind of meditation, sweetest level of meditation that I've had in years. So I strongly recommend this. And I know I've been saying that about all of the releases today, but this is one of the best of the year, folks. And don't miss out. Yeah,
I'm right with you there.
And for the price, I mean, hey, what is there to lose? I paid $22.
Yeah, I wish they should all be that price.
They should all be that price, is right. All right, time to talk about some Grateful Dead. So this is a band that I have heard a lot about over the years, but only in the last couple of years have I really started listening to. And I think there's a lot of misconceptions about this band. And I don't know how much we want to go down that particular rabbit hole, but last year, Steven Wilson did an excellent mix of Blues for Allah, and I absolutely adore Blues for Allah. It's like
such a good album.
Yeah, but it's like this weird communal band coming together and just making this offbeat and strange and beautiful music. And I have to say that if you're like me and you're coming to this album after that one, you're going to be in for a shock. However, it's really good. I do enjoy this. I don't enjoy this as much as Blues for Allah, but I really enjoy it. Now, the drummer, Mickey Hart, has done the mix. Is that correct?
Yes.
And it's a bit of a strange mix. It took me a minute to kind of get my ear accustomed to it, but I kind of dig it because it takes me back to the quadraphonic era. And I know you had asked me on our video from a couple of weeks ago, I'm looking forward to hearing your thoughts on this, because for me, like, the drums are in the sides or whatever. So I made a point to pay attention to where the drums were coming from, particularly because the drummer made the mix. And it definitely has this kind of like Bruce Botnick old school, drums are slamming me in the back. Sometimes they're up front. Sometimes they kind of feel like pivoted between the front and the back, which I guess is closest I get to sides. But overall, like, I find this a successful mix. I think it's rather conservative. It's not going to like have things whizzing by your ears or anything. But for what it is, I think it's really well done.
Yeah. Well, I think it is definitely better than the 5.1 mix that Mickey also did in like 2001 or 2002, which is also on that Blu-ray. I think the Atmos mix is quite a bit more interesting. But like, I think this album is significant. Like, it was kind of sort of their wider commercial breakthrough. I mean, sure. I think people bought their records prior to Workingman's Dead, but in 1970, they did both Workingman's Dead, and then a few months later they did American Beauty, which I think is kind of a step up from this record in almost every way. Like, it sounds better, the songs are better, and I think the better sound was because of Stephen Barncard, the engineer. American Beauty has some of their most celebrated songs, like Friend of the Devil, Ripple. I mean, this one has the two big songs are Uncle John's Band and Casey Jones, the last track. Yeah. And Cumberland Blues, they also played on the Europe 72 live album. That's like, I mean, all these tracks, like from both Workingman's Dead and American Beauty, are kind of considered like a pairing. Yeah, I think this is kind of the most like country or Americana the Dead ever got. And depending on whether you like that stuff or not is sort of contingent on what you'll think of this album. I think for you, like, I expected, as someone who kind of liked the more experimental Blues for Allah, like, this wouldn't be as interesting to you.
Yeah.
But I mean, the thing that excites me the most about this release is that we might get more of the Dead's catalog in Atmos. I mean, certainly I hope they release the Steven Wilson mix of American Beauty, because I really like that mix.
I would buy that. Yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, so there's the two that Steven did, which are American Beauty and Europe 72, the live album. those have both been streaming in Atmos for a couple years. But aside from that, like I hope they'll just commission more Atmos mixes of the other Dead albums, like whether they're by Steven or by Mickey Hart or somebody else. I think one of the albums I've gotten kind of obsessed with is the record that they did after Blues for Allah. It's called Terrapin Station.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It's probably like the most prog the Dead ever got, I guess you could say. And it's very much like a studio album. Like it's got like brass and string overdubs. The whole second side is like a side-long suite with all these different movements and things. It would be such a good Atmos mix. Sure. Like you'll take a listen to that record and you'll immediately agree with me. You'll be like, oh, I got to hear this in surround.
Well, I'm glad you recommended it because I've been to our local music exchange a few times and I think I've seen it. And I've looked at the Dead section and thought, I want to buy something, but I don't know what.
It's got a great cover too. It's got it's like a house with these two turtles standing on it with tambourines. I kid you not. Like it's one of those.
Yeah. So you don't think the Grateful Dead did drugs, do you?
I don't know what you're talking about. But yeah, I mean, completely unrelated to this album. I hope they at least do Atmos of that one because I think that would be a wild Atmos mix.
Yeah.
But for this record, yeah, I mean, it's an iconic album. It's an unusual mix. It's kind of mixed by the drummer, so it's like the drummer's perspective, kind of like you're sitting at the kit. It's a little weird at times. Like I feel like on a few of the songs, there's not enough sound in the front.
Yeah.
Like it kind of feels like the vocals in the front and then like everything else is either kind of back a little bit or all the way back. And I feel like there has to be like something kind of anchoring the soundstage. Like it sounds a little too diffuse at a couple points for me.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
But I mean, it's cool to have people experiment with the format. Like it would be boring if all the Atmos mixes were done the same way, right?
Yeah, or by the same person. Like I think that would be even worse. As much as I love Steven Wilson's work, I'm interested in other people's perspective just as much.
Like the Kraftwerk mix is nothing like one of the ones Steven would do, and it's great.
Yeah, it's all the better for it. But or something like Under Wraps, again, looming large, but that's nothing like what Steven Wilson would do. But it's great.
Oh yeah.
So some thoughts on this, just from a musical standpoint. I am growing to appreciate Jerry Garcia as a guitarist because here's a guy, let me start again. So anybody who can play, country, rock, blues, and, hip jazz stuff too, is already automatically an impressive musician.
And he's great. He's a great singer too.
And a great singer too. Yeah. I love his voice. And so coming into this album, I am not so much a fan of like the country rock stuff, although on the second listen, it was starting to kind of grow on me. I love Ween's country album. So it's like I can get into some country now and then. But I have to say that the more blues based stuff is a little bit more to my flavor. And there's a song, I think it's the one next to the end I mentioned, sounds like it could have been on Captain Beefheart's Safe as Milk album. And that's definitely in my wheelhouse. But so kind of the first three songs are I'm a little meh on them, but from like the fourth or fifth song on, I really do enjoy this album. And from a mixing perspective, I think that particularly since this is acoustic instrument based, I think the acoustic instruments sound very natural. I don't hear any like heavy use of compression or anything kind of suffocating the mix in any way. I can pick out all the parts. Is it as amazing and immersive as Blues for Allah? No, the material isn't. It's not. But I think if you like this band, it's worth checking out. I don't know if I'd recommend it, kind of broadly to our viewers, but if you like the Grateful Dead, yeah, I recommend it.
I mean, again, like I said with Kraftwerk, like Rhino is just killing it with these inexpensive standalone Blu-rays. So I'd be more inclined to check out something I wasn't totally sure about in this format than if it was in like, a 10-disc box set.
Same here. Yeah.
And it would have been easy for them to do a box set of all the Dead albums that had been mixed in Atmos. Because for the most part, they are sequential. Certainly Workingman's American Beauty and Europe 72 could have been one set. Then there's a couple of gaps leading up to Blues for Allah. There's, I think, 2 more studio albums in there that they haven't done in surround yet. I hope they do those. Those two albums are good. Wake of the Flood and From the Mars Hotel. And the Mars Hotel is kind of similar to Blues for Allah. Like there's kind of a jazzy experimental thing happening on that album. But yeah, I mean, bring on the standalone Blu-rays.
Yeah.
I wonder what you'll think of, if you haven't heard it before, American Beauty, because I've always preferred American Beauty to Workingman's Dead. Like, both for the sonics, the songs themselves, pretty much everything. So
if they go in chronological order, American Beauty's probably going to be next year?
Yes.
Maybe.
So if they were to release them chronologically, American Beauty and Europe 72 would be the next two releases.
They should do them both together.
But like, there's been sort of like no rhyme or reason to any of this. Like, for Blues for Allah, it was the 50th anniversary when it came out, but we learned that the mix had been done like a long time before. Like, I think Steven said when it was announced, like he mixed it in 2019 and it came out in 2025.
Wow.
The American Beauty Atmos was released in 2022, which had no relation to when the album came out in 1970.
Okay.
And they've been doing these expanded reissues of the other albums. Like they did a huge like vinyl reissue and expanded CD of Europe 72 at the same time the Atmos mix came out on streaming. This was in October of 22, and they could have done the Atmos Blu-ray then, and they didn't. No. They've done these they've done expanded reissues before for both Workingman's Dead and American Beauty. They've been doing these things. They call them like the Angels Share. It's like a bonus disc with like, they give you kind of like the King Crimson reissues. They give you like the complete recording sessions. And for some of the, like for the American Beauty one, there's like 30 takes of Friends of the Devil. Like I think they like played these songs to death in the studio, like trying to get them perfect, which is kind of the opposite of what you think of. Like you think of the Dead as like they go out on stage, like they just play it and it's different every time.
Yeah. But
I think that in the studio records, like they really did try to like use the studio and they tried to make the songs more concise, at least on these two albums. On Blues for Allah, there's some like noodly parts, like the title song.
Yeah. And I'm a fan of the title song, unlike many people are. So
I like it a lot better in Atmos than in stereo.
To be honest, I've only heard it in Atmos, so that could be coloring my opinion, but I do really appreciate it. Okay. I thought that since I've got you here, and we've reviewed 5 excellent multi-channel albums that we both, I think, recommend. We would take an opportunity to talk about 2 releases that have been announced and probably don't quite fit into, or I should say, there isn't quite enough to make an announcement video yet. So we're just going to kind of dribble these in at the last minute. But we did talk about Gentle Giant's In a Glass House. I made a video about that. But today, King Crimson announced Islands is going to get an Atmos release, I think on September 25th. And I didn't bring a graphic for it, so maybe I'll just flash one up on screen for a few seconds. So let's just talk about that for a moment. Are we excited for Islands?
Well, I think we talked about it a little bit when we did a review a long time ago of Lizard and Poseidon, the Atmos editions. And I mean, I think it's no surprise when I interviewed Steven, he said he was working on it at the time. Yeah. I mean, that's around when it was done, like mid-February, something like that. I mean, I've heard it, so yeah, I think that I've never liked it as much as I liked Blizzard.
Yeah.
But and the 2010, the reissue that came out with the 5.1 mix was kind of an early one that Steven did that I think there's certainly room for improvement.
Yeah.
Like I went back and listened to it not that long ago. Like it's not bad, but I think it's one of those albums like Lizard. It could benefit with a little more kind of adventurous placement of things.
Sure.
There's certainly like, in a song like, Formentara Lady, you could do stuff with all the percussion and things. I've always liked Ladies of the Road. I love the guitar riff on that. I think it's a cool song with the like overlapping vocals and things. I like the title track as well. Yeah. Some of the other songs like Sailor's Tale, like the guitar solo, I've always found it sort of abrasive, and that's kind of the intention of what it was supposed to be. So all this is to say, it's never been one of my favorite Crimson albums, but it will be interesting to see because I think the Atmos of Lizard was way better than the 5.1. You know, well, I'm acting like I haven't heard it because I have, but yeah, I think that they've done a great job with these reissues, with the complete recording sessions, with the new Atmos mixes, and
yeah.
I'm excited to hear what people think of it because it's probably the most I've appreciated the album.
Well, that's good. See, that's what I was curious about because, and who knows, I might make this a separate video, but it's my least favorite King Crimson album by like a mile.
You like the construction of light better than Islands? I think that would be my least favorite.
That's a tough call. It's really unfair, but maybe, I don't know. But I have the opposite opinion. The only song I like on Islands is Sailor's Tale.
Oh, interesting.
And I think that the guitar solo is really interesting, even though it kind of doesn't go anywhere, because that guitar solo was where Fripp developed his specific picking style, where it's like he used a banjo picking style for guitar. And it's like, if we wouldn't have had that, there would be no, say, Lark's Tongues and Aspic Part 2, or even go further, like something like Frame by Frame.
Yeah,
you know?
I guess I never really thought of that being a through line because I love Frame by Frame. That's one of my favorite songs on that album.
Well, it all started there, and it's not to me. Sailor's Tale. If it had been on another King Crimson album, it would have been like, okay, that's an also ran. But because this album is particularly kind of depressing for me. Like I find it kind of a depressing record. And Fripp did too. Like he broke up the band afterwards. So that's like the brightest spot in kind of a dull album for me. But I have to say that now that it's been announced, I did kind of make a statement on our preview of the year because we kind of talked about how this might happen. I said, well, that might be the first one I don't buy. But now that it's upon us, I think I've decided to pick it up because I'd be curious to see if it improves my opinion of the record any. But I have to say that you were talking about how the Legacy 5.1 mix is a little bit rickety to begin with. It's a little bit older, but I actually think that that's one of the ones that was most improved over the original mix. Have you heard the original mix of Islands?
Yeah, I mean, so was Lizard.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. Those were kind of like, I think those were the two. They were kind of like with Aqualung in the Tell catalog. Like they're the ones where there was an opportunity to improve the sonics of the album.
Yeah.
As opposed to just sort of keeping it the way it was and mixing it in surround, which is kind of the case of some of the other albums. Like I don't think anyone would say like the original mix of Discipline was bad.
No.
Like it was just kind of about, putting it into surround and creatively placing the parts.
Yeah.
But yes, I agree with you.
Yeah, I mean, he fixed a lot of errors. Like I remember there was like a bad scratch sound on like the opening cello part on the original mix, and that's completely removed. And I remember the first time I heard his mix of it, I was just thought, wow, I didn't know that was clean. Like something must have happened, in the mastering stage, the original time around. So on the subject of In a Glass House, completely unprompted, I'm curious to get your opinion on the idea of using an algorithm to demix an entire album. Like I know Steven Wilson has done it to fill in gaps, like say the track Broken on Tears for Fears songs from the Big Chair, or even there's
talking about a more
Hawkwind.
I was just going to say, talking about something more timely. What's the Kings of Speed? And what was the other track?
I can't remember now. But there's two songs on
Spiral Galaxy something.
Spiral Galaxy, yeah. And I have to say that in Steven's hands, those AI assisted remix attempts are truly successful. Like I listened to the whole Hawkwind disc, and I'm going to review it. I'm going to review it with our friend Mike. It was going to be included in today's video, but we made a last-minute decision to switcheroo because Mike couldn't make it.
Spoiler, it's really good.
yeah. Spoiler, it is really good. And I forgot that those 2 tracks were missing the multi-tracks. I thought they sounded good. So all this is just an extended introduction to kind of open the floor. How do you feel about doing this for an entire album?
I don't know. I mean, you always run the risk that, like, what if you find the tapes later?
Exactly.
Do another reissue. I mean, that was kind of what happened with the Gentle Giant debut album. They had done the 3-piece suite, which I think was still a great release because it had songs from Acquiring the Taste and Three Friends, which say they did the debut album, they wouldn't have been able to release those. And from Acquiring the Taste, it was only 1 song they had the tracks for. So I kind of like the idea that at the very least they could do Three Friends, because they had all of side 2, I think, for the 3-piece suite. So those missing songs they could fill in with this new tech, and then Three Friends could be its own release, maybe with an Atmos mix. I think that would be an interesting idea, as opposed to just reissuing the whole 3-piece suite in Atmos. Though I do like that track from Acquiring the Taste, The House, the Street, the Room. That's a cool song. So that would be nice to hear in Atmos. But the idea of doing it for a whole record, I don't know. I think, fans have had these tools you can play with, that are probably not as good as whatever they used on In a Glass House. But I feel like if you're asking someone to actually, like, pay for a product, as opposed to, like, something you just sort of made at home playing with the tracks, like, it's got to be really good.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And in the case of In a Glass House, I think they're fairly certain that those tapes are gone. Like, I had read a story on one of the forums that people think they went up in, like, a fire for some reason, and I'm not sure, like, historically why that would be, depending on how it was recorded and where. I mean, maybe you know more about the history of the album.
Well, this isn't necessarily. I can't confirm this. We'll put this in rumor category, but I'd say about a decade ago, I was looking at a thread on Progressive Ears, and somebody came forward and said, I used to work at such and such studios in the 70s and 80s, and we were ordered to burn the In a Glass House masters. And I think that this could be true, because why would you lie about that?
I don't know. Well, from what I know about the album, again, as someone who's gotten into Gentle Giant relatively recently, mainly because of these reissues with Surround. From what I've read, like, they didn't have a great time making the album, and it was made, like, relatively quickly. And I think Gentle Giant were one of those bands that would kind of labor over mixing, which is why a lot of their albums already sounded pretty good. Yeah. I mean, I think for some of the albums, Steven was able to make improvements. Like, the drums and bass on Tower of the Glory are so much punchier than so much more punchy than in the original. But, like, the old albums, like, didn't sound bad. I mean, maybe the only exception to that is the missing piece. For whatever reason, the original version just has no bass. I don't know why that is. But I think with this album, they were never quite happy with how it turned out. Like, it was just done very quickly. And I know that in Derek's autobiography, he mentioned, like, it was a very emotional experience hearing the album, remixed, even though it wasn't from the tapes. And I think, comparing the versions of Way of Life, I kind of veer on the side that I do think the new version is better. Certainly the rhythm section is a little more upfront, which is in line with what has been done with the remixes of all the other albums. And I think that that makes the material just feel a little more vibrant. I agree with you too, though, that there's parts of it where you can maybe kind of hear what the software is doing, like this sort of odd, like, tinniness to some of the higher frequencies. Yeah. Yep. I mean, I reserve judgment until hearing the surround mix, because I think certainly with those artifacts, like with my own experience of playing with demixing tools, you can kind of mask some of that stuff by it being in stereo, because everything is sort of mashed together. But when the parts are extracted and put into different speakers, sometimes the artifacts are more apparent. So I'm curious what it'll sound like, and I'm curious, like, how they approach the mix, because it'll probably be different in style than the ones that Steven has done.
Oh,
I mean,
definitely.
certainly the Dan Bornmark mix of Playing the Fool was completely different than.
Yeah.
It was completely different even than the 5-1 mixes that Steven did of those tracks from Playing the Fool for the Octopus reissues. So yeah, I mean, I think it's great they're continuing the series. I think it's great that the band is so into surround, because they're like, I mean, they're kind of one of the ultimate bands for surround mixing.
Mm-hmm.
Like I feel like that them and Pink Floyd are like the two that it feels like the music was really made for it. So I'm excited about it.
I am too. Yeah, cautiously optimistic. There are a few mixing choices that I'm not a fan of. Like I don't like how they smothered the vocals and reverb, and I suspect that was done maybe to cover up some of those machine anomalies. I don't know. But hey, it's like it doesn't matter how they did it. It matters what the result sounds like. And I think it's important. I mean, judging by some of my comments, that people understand that the AI in use here is not generative. It's not Chat GPT. It's taking a stereo mix down and just identifying those different component parts, what we call stems, breaking them out.
Personally, like if I were them, like I don't think they should use the term AI to describe what it is. It should just be called stem separation software. Like that's what it is.
not just Gentle Giant, but the industry should get away from the idea of calling this AI, because it's like one of the things that my commenters brought up is, it's destructive for the environment. You know, it uses resources, electricity, water, and so I Googled it. How is my software on my computer using up resources? And the answer is it doesn't. It's not the same thing. It's not being pulled from a data center that needs cooled. The only resources it's pulling is your processing power on your computer. So I think it's important to people to know that this is a good use of the so-called AI tech. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
To go back to your original point, I don't like the idea that in order to like mass produce Atmos mixes that you could just like run them through this thing. Sure. I think you should always like look for tapes first.
Yeah.
I don't like the idea that it's like if it's too much work to go hunting in the archive for tapes that somebody could just, run an album through this thing and have that be the Atmos mix. I think it should only be used in scenarios where they don't have the multi-tracks.
Agreed. Yeah, it should be a last resort. But, hey, I'm interested to hear the results. I'm sure that we'll review it. Bring on July 31st. I'm looking forward to listening to this album again. It's one of my favorites. So
it's great that it's coming out so soon. Announced and it's coming out a month later.
Yeah. That seems to be the turnaround for these releases lately. I mean, unless it's Headphone Dust or you guys and it's out like in a couple days. It seems like the turnaround's been pretty decent lately. So, Jonathan, I want to thank you for joining me today. It's been a lot of fun talking about these releases as usual. Before we go, you want to preview anything for us that you're working on?
Well, the Reef Stramus album, of course. Yeah.
How's that going?
It's coming along. I mean, you've heard a pass at the whole album, haven't you?
Yeah. And I was pleased. So, I'm really excited to show that to people. And I hope that by releasing this in Atmos and going to the trouble, that it does bring more ears to the project, because that's one thing that I've seen about this format is that there's a group out there. Well, literally there's a forum called Quadraphonic Quad, but there's an inbuilt audience for this material that will pretty much listen to anything if it's in Atmos, because they're enthusiastic about the format. So I'm really excited to get it in front of some new ears. And I'm excited to be working with you. And I hope that this isn't the only thing we work on. I hope that there's future projects.
Somehow I don't think it will be. I think there will be more.
I think there will be.
Yeah.
All right, folks. Well, thanks for watching. And let us know your thoughts on these 5 albums in the comments section below. And, along with that, let's add to this conversation about multi-channel music in general. If you want to tell us about your thoughts on the Islands release, the In a Glass House release, or even this debate over the AI stem separation technology. How do you feel about its use? But until then, this has been a lot of fun. And Jonathan, I'm looking forward to the next time we find each other on a StreamYard call. You take care, my friend.
You too. Thanks.
All right. Bye-bye.